YouTube, how's it going? Nate Grade 321 back again, and I'm doing this video as a response video to NEStalgiaholic, aka Gamester81, aka Star Wars Nuts 77, and you probably know at least one of his channels. He's a really popular YouTuber around here, and he did a video concerning the Nintendo Entertainment System's upcoming birthday on October 18th. It's turning 25 years old. It was released in 1985, which is older than me, just by a few years, but it's a very nostalgic system for me anyways because it was the first system that I had, and this NES right here is the actual one that I had as a kid. It's the one that I still use regularly today. I mean, go figure, I've bought 2 cents, one of which had a new 72-pin connector in there, and still, the old one that I originally had is the most reliable one. You know, go figure, huh? But yeah, it's still the one that I use regularly, and it's great that I can use the actual one I used as a kid, you know, still using it. Who would have thought? You know, I'm 22 right now, and I probably got this when I was 3 years old. You know, who would have thought 19 years later that I would be still playing that system? Kind of crazy, but it's a really neat system. It's probably right up there with the Sega Genesis as far as my favorite old school systems. So many classic games, and it's got a great, you know, kind of mix of pick up and play. Games are easy to understand. You know, it's 2 buttons. It can't get too complicated, but at the same time, there's a level of challenge to it. You know, kind of simple, similar to like arcade games at the time, where they weren't complex, you know, graphically or anything like that. But the challenge was definitely there. So that adds a lot of replayability to it, and you know, it makes the game seem worthwhile. I mean, if you're only paying, I mean, you can find NES games now for a couple bucks, you know, some of the more popular ones get in the teens and the 20s, but you're really getting your money's worth because those games are very challenging, very replayable, and very awesome, very, very good, well-made games. Anyway, what the video is about is my top 5 NES games of all time, and remember, I am limited, and this should be obvious, but I'll throw it out there anyway, I am limited to the games I've played, obviously. These are my top 5 games that I've played, whether as a kid or now as I get into collecting and things like that. I have close to like 80 NES games, I believe. I haven't counted lately, but that's probably right. But there probably are some ones that a lot of you out there like that I either haven't played or just, you know, I haven't gotten into them as much as I could. So just keep that in mind. But if there's suggestions for games you don't see on here, do you think maybe I should try based on what these are? Similar games, you know, let me know, give me a recommendation, and I'm always on the lookout for NES games all the time. But yeah, these are just my top 5 for now. This is an ever-changing list, too, by the way, depending on games I play. But let's go ahead and get right into it. My top 5, starting with number 5, Ninja Gaiden. I have Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2, and 2 is very good, but something about the first one just, I don't know. I like them both fairly equally, but I'm probably leaning more towards this one. The music in it's really good. It's really innovative for its time because it's got a lot of, I guess you'd call them cutscenes, but it's got a story. I mean, for most NES games, that's, you know, unheard of. They don't have stories. They're just kind of arcade ports, or it's something like Super Mario's, where it's kind of a vague story, but it's not a big deal. This one actually does have a narrative that it tells through, you know, in between levels. It shows little cutscenes, kind of anime style, if you will. Very interesting game, punishingly difficult. Very, very hard game, but very fun game. It's one that I find myself, if I'm bored, you know, I pick up and play it all the time. And despite its punishing difficulty, it's very, very fun, which is what you find with a lot of NES games. So that's the mark of a good game, if it kicks your butt and you still like it. So Ninja Gaiden is number 5. Number 4, I had a tough one deciding which number in this series to pick. I didn't really want to put like multiple games from the same series in this list. So of this series, I picked probably the most popular one. That's Mega Man 2. This is one I did not play as a kid. I didn't play Ninja Gaiden either, but Mega Man 2 is one that I picked up when I started getting back into collecting and stuff. And it's a solid game, very solid game. Again, the difficulty's up there, but it's all about memorizing patterns and things like that. So after a while, you kind of get used to it. The music is phenomenal in this game. I mean, it's well known for its music. Each stage has just great music, and they're all pretty unique, so it's worth listening to all of them, really. and it's just very simple, deceptively simple gameplay. But again, very challenging. The mark of a good NES game. Very cool game. Definite must-have for any NES player out there. Mega Man 2, at least this one, if not all the Mega Man games. At least like 1 through 3. I think 2 and 3 are the most popular, but I'll say 2 out of all of them. Next, number 3 on my list. This is kind of one I played as a kid, but I'll explain that. And that's Contra, a absolute classic NES game. Very, very good, very awesome game, and everybody knows the code. Up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, select start, I believe. The Contra code to get you however many lives it gets you. That's the only way I can beat the game. I'm not as good as, Dinky Dana or anybody at playing this game, setting world records and stuff, but it's still a fun game, very cool co-op game. That's, where it really shines. When you have 2 players playing, running and gunning at the same time. Arcade style, just awesome game. Very good port of the arcade, one of those rare instances where I actually think I prefer the home console part to the arcade. Since I've gotten the MAME cab here, I've played the Contra arcade version. Something about it, I don't know if I'm just used to the NES one, if it just kind of holds more nostalgic value to me, but for whatever reason I prefer the NES one. And my experience playing this game as a kid is actually a neighbor, someone who lived on my block. His older brother, who was probably must have been in his 20s at the time, teens or 20s. I was probably 3 or 4. Well, maybe older than that. I don't know, whatever. Mid-90s probably. He had a Contra arcade machine, a dedicated arcade in the basement. And that blew my mind because I had never met anyone with an arcade machine. That was a dream for me to have a Mortal Kombat cab or anything in my house. The fact that he had an arcade machine was awesome. And I think I only probably played it a couple of times at his house, but I was so into it. I loved it. And just the fact that you can put the quarter in, take it back out, and play an infinite number of times blew my mind. But that's really all I remember about it. I don't remember anything about the specific gameplay or anything like that. I just remember that experience, and that's kind of a good Contra memory for me. But anyways, the NES version is probably the one I'd pick over the 2. And it's an easy to find game these days. So, no excuse not to have it in your collection. And these top 2 are largely based on childhood nostalgia memories. They're games I loved as a kid, and I believe both of these, maybe, are the physical copies I had as a kid. Okay, one's not, but I do have the physical copy somewhere. But anyway, these are both games I had as a kid, and they're both very, very good games. Now, at number 2 might be a controversial-ish pick. Obviously, when you think of Nintendo, you think of Super Mario. Classic game. 3 fantastic games on the NES. And while 3 is good, and I love 1, my favorite is number 2. I don't know. I know that technically, everyone's going to say it's not a Mario game. Technically, it's a conversion of Doki Doki Panic, blah, blah, blah. I know, but for my money, I like Mario 2. I don't know. It's just got different gameplay, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, just everyone's complaining that it's a port of Doki Doki Panic. It's not a bad game. It's a pretty good game, pretty interesting. I don't know, just something about it. I really, really like it, and this is the one I remember the most as a kid. I had all 3, but for whatever reason, this one stood out the most. Probably because it was the most, the one that's so different of the series. That's probably why it stood out to me. But I still have fun playing this game. Again, it's one of those things, if I'm bored, I can sit down and, waste a lot of time with this game. Very cool game. I don't know, definitely recommend it. Obviously, if you have an NES, you gotta have one of the Mario games, if not all 3. There's no excuse not to have it. But number 2 is my personal favorite Mario, and it comes in at number 2 on the list. And number 1 on the list, an absolutely fantastic game. I know it's one a lot of people like. I don't know if many people would pick it as their favorite, but it's by far my favorite, and that is Batman. One of the first games I ever played in my life, and I sucked at it as a kid. I don't know if I remember much past the second level. Remember, I was 3 years old here, so give me some credit. But this is where I, busted my gaming chops here, so it only went up from there, basically. But yeah, Batman. I was a huge Batman fan back in the day. Even after this game came out, the animated series, the movies like Batman Returns, I had so many toys from the animated series and the movies. There was even an amusement park nearby where I grew up where they had a live action like Batman stunt show. I used to love that, and it was crazy. It was like the real Batmobile from the first movie was on display there, and I would just want to go to the amusement park just to stand there and look at it. I mean, it was amazing, so cool. Huge Batman fan back in the day, and this, as a kid Batman fan, this is all you could ask for. But even if you're not a huge Batman fan, this game stands well enough alone. Great music. All the Sunsoft games have fantastic music in them. Really kind of simple NES gameplay. You punch, you have weapons you can use. You have 3 weapons you can use. It's a challenging game. It's really, really good. It's got that perfect kind of NES balance of pick up and play and challenge. And, add a little nostalgic value to that for me. And the fact that I'm a huge Batman fan makes this really the perfect NES game for me. And my number 1. So that's my top 5. Feel free to respond with your top 5 to either my video, or you can respond to NEStalgiaholic's original video, which I'll link to in the description. He goes a little more in depth with the NES and kind of his favorite accessories and things like that. So feel free to watch that. But yeah, for now, Nate Gray 321 signing out.